So today we will be learning about forms and models of attention. See, when we talk about cognitive psychology, there are certain areas which we should be very well versed with. जैसे कि attention, attention, perception, language, problem solving, decision making, thinking, metacognition, etc. Okay. Like these are some very important areas that we need to be aware about. Okay. Memory, sorry, I forgot the main aspect of it. Memory, right? So today in today's class, I want to focus on forms and models of attention. In all the net exams that have happened before, I have not seen so many questions on attention. Jitna is very visible in perception or memory. That is why I'm not going to extend the session on attention so much. I'm going to try and finish it by today itself. We are going to focus on all the important models because a lot of times they might ask questions which are match the following types, that they'll mention the researcher's name and then they'll mention the model or a description of it. So keeping all of those things in mind, we'll cover today's class. Okay. Now, first we start with basic MCQs, like you know the drill. First, let's understand how much we know. Okay. Which of the following models explains attention as a flexible allocation of mental effort based on task demands? I know these are a lot of words here. Are we familiar with them? Like, are we familiar with these theories by any chance? Okay. It's okay, Payal. Even if you don't know these, we are going to cover all of them today. So don't worry. I know there are a lot of people who have not taken 6 papers psychology, so they never learned cognitive. So it's fine. We'll do it. Yeah. Swati, the reason why you don't know C and D is because in the updated textbooks, no, revised editions, they don't teach Kahneman's capacity model and the rate selection model. That is why. But they are equally important. Yes, so the answer is C, and we'll understand why it is so later when I'm explaining it. Fine? Okay. Next. Which model would best explain a person noticing a fire alarm sound in the background while engaged in a focused conversation? Yes, answer is B. Very good. Next. Okay, fine. So, okay, there were only 2 MCQs in the beginning. I have put a lot of MCQs in between also, wherever I've thought, ki, okay, this concept is confusing. So, in today's class, be prepared to see MCQs in between also. Fine. Let's begin. Now I'm closing the chat box. I'll only open it when I am showing you the MCQs. Okay. And then at the end of the lecture, if you have any questions. Okay. Yeah. Kahneman, yes. He wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. Yes. Okay. Kahneman guy had written his capacity model of attention. Apart from that, like you said, he's written the book. He's also given this theory, prospect theory, with Tversky, where he explains how people make decisions under risk. He's also someone who's known for heuristics, uh, heuristics and biases. So you'll see him in all over your textbook in cognitive psychology. Okay, fine. So let's begin. Yes, big name in decision making. Yes. Yeah, he won a Nobel Prize also in economics, because he's very well known in the area of behavioral economics. Okay. I think he also gave system 1 and 2 thinking, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. All right. Fine. So let's begin with attention. Okay. So what is attention? Attention is basically a family of processes that includes selection, resource allocation, inhibition, and enhancement. Okay. Uh, Now, why are we focusing on resource allocation, and why are we talking about inhibition and enhancement? You'll get a hang of it as in when we learn the models of attention, right? But if you talk about the textbook definition of attention, attention is basically a mental process of concentrating effort on a stimulus or a mental event. Okay. So there is either going to be a stimulus or there is going to be some kind of mental event. So what does attention allow us to do? It allows us to select the relevant stimuli from our environment while suppressing irrelevant information. So for example, right now I'm taking your class. However, there is a lot of noise in the background, and I don't know if you all are able to hear it, but throughout the day, there's a flat up, upper, जहाँ पे I think there is some renovation work going on. So the entire day there is some or the other noise that's coming. However, because now I have decided that I want to take lecture and I can't afford being distracted, I'm going to focus on what I'm talking about right now. So what am I doing here? I am selecting relevant stimuli. I am choosing actively to just focus on my class, right? While suppressing other irrelevant information around me, right? So think of attention as your mind's searchlight, okay? Where my mind is constantly choosing what to focus on, okay? In a crowded scene. Okay? That is why we are calling it a process of selection. I am choosing to pay attention to something. I am choosing to allocate my mental resources on the things on my plate, right? While inhibiting certain things. Okay, that is basically what attention is. All right. Now, when you talk about different forms of attention, there is selective attention, there is divided attention, and there is sustained attention. Selective attention is basically when you focus on one input and you ignore others. Okay. Divided attention means you are allocating attention to multiple tasks. Okay. For example, texting while driving, which is so dangerous. What is that? It is divided attention, right? Now, it is common sense that your performance is going to drop when both the tasks are demanding. For example, when you're driving, why is it said that you should not be texting? Because it leads to so many accidents. Because both the tasks are demanding. When you're texting, you will have to look at the screen. Even if you are someone who is very well versed with the QWERTY keyboard, still, if there's a long message that you're sending, or if there is an important message on your work group or your college group, you have to pay attention to what you're typing, right? And at the same time, your eyes have to be on the road. So divided attention that way can be very dangerous when both tasks are demanding. However, we still end up doing a lot of tasks at the same time. Then how is it that we do that? For example, if I'm listening to music, I'll still be able to fold clothes. If I'm listening to music, I'll still be able to cook. Why is that so? Because in this case, at least one task is less demanding. Listening to music is not demanding at all, right? Even if it is an unfamiliar song, you're not going to be so confused that, oh my God, this is a very different song. I've never heard it before. Oh my God, now it is complete. It is absolutely difficult for me to do anything else but listen to this song, right? ऐसा नहीं होता है. So divided attention works when at least one of the tasks is less demanding or automatic. We will talk more about this, about automatic processing and controlled processing later in our class today. Okay. Moving on to sustained attention. Sustained attention basically talks about maintaining focus over time. Okay. For example, when let's say you are okay, for example, air traffic controllers, they need to have sustained attention, right? Now, uh, if you are extremely tired, you know, like if there's a lot of fatigue, then that can affect your performance when we talk about sustained attention. So these are like three major things that you need to remember when we're talking about forms of attention. Now, when we talk about selective attention specifically, because a lot of models and a lot of theories are on selective attention, so you will also end up seeing a lot of MCQs also on selective attention. So when we talk about selective attention, there are two things: dichotic listening and cocktail party effect. What are those? First, dichotic listening task. So in any kind of attention theories and models, or any chapter that you see in any textbook, you will first come across something known as the dichotic listening task. So I'll just tell you what it is. Basically, participants are given earphones, okay, and headphones, and in each ear they are able to listen to two different kinds of messages. Okay, so imagine like this is my human being, okay, and this person has headphones on. Okay, now in this ear this person will listen to some message. In this ear this person is going to listen to some message. Now that message could be anything. It could be a song, it could be a story, it could be some instructions given, but basically point is ki in both the ears you're going to listen to two different messages. Okay, now in all dichotic listening tasks, the task given to the participant is that they are told specifically which ear to pay attention to. For example, the researcher might tell the participant that, listen, you have to shadow messages in your left ear. Now, what does shadow mean? Shadow means to repeat aloud. So the participants are told that listen to the messages on the left ear and you have to shadow them. You have to repeat them out loud and ignore the ones which are there in your right ear. Okay. Now, usually the messages that the participant is asked to shadow, okay, that is called the attended message. And the messages which the participants are asked to ignore, those are called unattended messages. Okay. Now, what is the result? That if the participants are asked to repeat the messages which they are listening to, which they are attending to, which they are shadowing basically, they do it with very high accuracy. Okay. But later, after the task is over, if they are asked, ki, okay, you were listening to the messages on the left ear, right? What was being said on the right ear? If you ask them that, then they are going to know very little about it, because obviously selective attention, right? I'm choosing to focus on the messages given in my left ear and not the right one. Okay. However, it's not that the unattended messages are absolutely ignored. There are a few things, like for example, if the voice changes from a man to a woman in your right ear, even if you're not paying attention to it, they might notice that. Okay. However, if the language changes or if the meaning changes or something, participants are not going to pick on that at all, because they are focused on the messages on the left ear. Again, I'm giving left ear as just an example. It is completely on the researcher's discretion as to which ear they want the participants to shadow. Okay, so that is the dichotic listening and shadowing task that you should know. Then you have the cocktail party phenomenon, very, very popular. Morey had given this phenomenon. So basically, what is that? Imagine, now I want you to imagine a scenario. Let's say you are in this party, okay, and let's say that is your bachelor's convocation party or farewell party, any party. So there are going to be a lot of students, right? But all of us have our own group with whom we usually hang out. So even if the entire batch is there, you're going to be hanging out with a few of your friends. Now, let's say you're indulging in a discussion with your own friends, and you're not really listening to what others are saying because everyone is talking to their own group members. So there is a lot of noise. Okay, but despite that, if someone takes your name, someone from the other group takes your name, immediately you're going to be like, "Ek minute, who took my name?" You were not really listening to any of the conversations that other people were indulging in. But the moment your name came up, you were alert. Ki, okay, wait, I thought someone took my name, right? That is basically the cocktail party effect. Even when you're ignoring other conversations, when you hear your own name, okay, across the room, you are going to suddenly be very vigilant about it. So this also suggests that even if there is some unattended information, I already told you what unattended information means. Information that you're not paying attention to is called unattended information. So it suggests that, even if you are not really paying attention to it, it is still processed for some meaning. And that is cocktail party effect. So it is usually said that there are a few names or if there are a few things, a few words for which we have a lower threshold. For example, when someone says danger, when someone says fire, okay, uh, or for some people who have phobias, if someone says spider, the word spider is going to have a very low threshold. If someone says crow, like for example, I am a zoophobic, so the moment someone says crow, even if that person is not really mentioning it in terms of a crow being nearby, still the threshold for that word is so low for me, I will start like running immediately. So that is cocktail party effect. It is not only related to like someone calling, like saying out your name, but also a few other words which might have a lower threshold. Okay. Now, this is the basics of selective attention. Now we move on to like the more important topics in terms of MCQs and in terms of net exam, which is models of selective attention. So the very first is the Broadbent's filter theory, okay, or filter model. Now, it is the metaphor is given that of early bottleneck. Okay, why is that so? Imagine a bottle being like this. Okay, there is a neck and there is a bottle, right? So Broadbent's filter theory is the name is called bottleneck theory as well. Okay, and specifically early bottleneck. Okay, matlab somewhere here. Now, why is that so? Broadbent says that all the incoming stimulation, okay, all the incoming stimuli first enters a sensory buffer. Okay, somewhere here. Like if you are imagining a bottle, all the incoming stimuli are going to enter a sensory buffer. Okay. Now, for example, right now in front of me, there's a laptop. I know that I'm talking to you guys. At the same time, I'm sitting in my room. Okay. I have my softboard in front of me where I've written a lot of things. There are to-do lists. There are a few pictures. There is a clock here. There are post-it notes here. I've put a few devices on charge. So there are so many things, right? So all of these stimuli are entering inside a sensory buffer. Now, I know for a fact that I can't pay attention to every single thing here. I can't be looking at the watch and be looking at if my device is getting charged or not. And at the same time look at my to-do list and freak out, oh my God, I have to do this while taking a class, correct? I know that right now my focus has to be on the lecture. So after all the stimuli has entered a sensory buffer, there is going to be another selective filter, okay, which basically is going to let information pass through based on physical properties only, okay, and it is going to see what is important and what is not. Okay. So for example, right now, all this information is entering my sensory buffer, but my brain is telling me, listen, right now, my laptop, the PPT that I'm sharing, and the fact that I am taking an online class is important. So only that gets past the selective filter. Whereas all the other things which are around me right now, they are going to be unattended. I'm not going to be paying attention to that. Okay, for example, if all of us were in a physical classroom, okay, and if I were talking to you, there would have been a window behind you all, or somewhere in the class. There would have been benches, there would have been fans and lights, but I wouldn't pay attention to all of that. The moment I enter the class, I would have just looked at your faces and I would have started teaching. I would have ignored what is going on outside the classroom. Correct? So that is basically broadband's filter model. Okay. So, however, there is a criticism of this filter theory that if you're talking about only certain things entering the sensory selective filter, then why is it that people notice their names even when they're not paying attention to that particular conversation? So basically it fails to explain cocktail party effect. This is a very important point. Okay, fails to explain the cocktail party effect. Okay. So basically, if I were to draw some like flow chart of sorts, sorry, just a minute. Okay, think of it in this way. Let's say this is my sensory store, okay, where I am getting some information. There is an information which is like attended information, something which I intend to pay attention to, and then there is source B, जहाँ का information I am not really attending. Okay, so this is unattended message. Now, when both these messages go to your sensory store, they are going to pass through a selective filter. Okay, that filter is going to be strictly based on physical properties. Okay, and then comes your bottleneck here. Okay, like once it passes through the selective filter, only then you actively start attending to the information. Okay, so that is broadband's model. Okay, now based on this, we'll look at an MCQ. Now, according to broadband's filter model, selection of a message to which to attend is based on what? Can someone, like, can you all tell me? I'm opening the chat box. Correct. It is the physical characteristics of the message. We are not going into the meaning. We are not going into the semantics. We are not going to the location. We're not even talking about the acoustic or auditory nature of the stimulus. It is strictly physical characteristics of the message. Very good. All right. Now, moving on. Now there is another model which is Traceman's and Traceman's attenuation model. Okay. So what is that about? Basically, this person, Anne Treisman, again, very, very popular. So she was of this opinion when she came across this model, Broadband's model. She was of this opinion that no, you can't say that unattended inputs are blocked. They can't be, because, like I just explained, cocktail party effect. There are a lot of times when we are not actively involved in discussions, but when someone says something, you immediately like, wait, what? What did you say? For example, for me, the word chai, tea, has extremely low threshold. Even if I am taking a lecture or something, but somewhere, if someone says chai, I'll be like, wait, what? Someone mentioned tea, because I mean, obviously, that is a very low threshold word for me. Then how is it that I'm able to listen to it even when I was involved in something else? Right? So Treisman was of this opinion that no, unattended inputs, unattended messages are not blocked. They are just turned down in volume. Okay. So words like my name or danger or fire or tea for that matter are going to have low thresholds, and therefore they are still going to get processed. Okay. So what does attenuation even mean? It comes from a Latin word, okay, which is attunere. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, which basically means to make something thin. Okay, to make thin. So when I say to attenuate, it means to thin something out, to reduce its intensity, to make it less powerful. Okay. So basically, according to Treisman, the filter, the sensory filter that exists is not rigid. Okay. It just attenuates the input. Okay. So all messages are processed at some or the other level. Okay. There are going to be some items which have lower recognition thresholds. Okay. Like your name or anything that you're fond of, anything you're scared of. So those items are still going to be able to break through. Okay. So imagine something like this. Let's say, you're driving your car and you are with your friends. Okay. And there's a song. There are a lot of songs playing on the radio. But the discussion that is going on with your friends is more interesting. So you lower the volume because someone is giving you some gossip. But still at the same time, if the radio plays your favorite music, even if you have turned down the volume, you're still going to be able to pick up. Even if you are very heavily invested in the discussion or in the gossip that your friends are into, you're still going to be like, hey, wait, this is my favorite song. I'm going to increase the volume, right? So that is another analogy that you can use. So basically, what Treisman was saying is that uh, the filter need not be rigid. You're just lowering the volume. You're just attenuating it a little bit. Okay. So that's that. So we are done with two models so far. We talked about broadband and we talked about Treisman's theory. Then we come to the late selection theory. Okay. Late selection theory तो अलग ही था. Late selection क्यों बोल रहे हैं? Because we spoke about broadband and early selection. What did broadband say? That no, whatever stimuli that comes in front of me, I don't process it for everything. I don't process it for meaning at all. I only look at the physical characteristics and I decide, okay, this is important, this is not important. But late selection model says that no, you are wrong. All the information gets processed semantically first. Semantically means you're looking for meaning. Everything you understand, and only after meaning making has happened, then you decide whether a particular thing is important or not. Okay. So it is like, for example, you open your Gmail and if I'm just giving you an analogy, you open your Gmail and you're reading all the emails, okay? And then you're replying only to the ones which are most important. You open and you are like, okay, wait, this is Naika's email. Oh, nice, but I don't need to respond to it. Oh, this is Gmail only sending me some email that, oh, this much GB is full. Subscribe to a pro version or something. And then you see your HOD sending you an email and you're like, okay, this is super important. I must respond, right? So this is what the late selection model proposes. Now, however, this model also has certain criticisms because honestly, this model sounds impractical. Because can we really process everything for meaning in the moment? Because see, how much ever models we talk about, okay, you have to understand that all of these are mental processes which are happening within milliseconds, right? Even when you talk about early selection, even when you talk about Treisman's model or late selection model also for that matter, we are studying it very systematically. We are breaking them down into components for us to understand. But when all of this is actually happening in our brain, it is not taking so much time. It is happening very quickly. And in our day-to-day life, when we are bombarded with so much information around us, do we really have time to sit and process everything for meaning? Is what this model has been criticized for. Okay, again, in cognitive psychology, you have to understand there is no ultimate truth. Unlike neuropsych or biopsych, where there are things which are fixed, that the visual process works in an XYZ manner only. No one is going to challenge that. Or we know for a fact that action potential works in a certain way only. However, in cognitive psychology, when we are trying to make sense of our higher order functioning, there are going to be multiple theorists who come with n number of theories, and each one is going to criticize the other. It is upon us to understand what suits us better. Okay. But yeah, so that's the late selection model. Then we have Kahneman's capacity model. Okay, sorry. So the metaphor which Kahneman's capacity model is given is that of cognitive resources being in a central pool. Okay, that is, your attention is basically an allocation of all your mental effort. So it is going to be influenced by arousal, it is going to be influenced by task difficulty and motivation. Okay, so basically three determinants. First, enduring dispositions, as in something like your name is always going to grab your attention, right? So that is something which is enduring, which is long lasting, and that is something which we are predisposed to. Okay, first. Second, momentary intentions, that is motivation. How goal driven are you? Okay, so for you to be able to pay attention to something, you need to be motivated also, not to pay attention to something. For example, if your friend is going on and on and on and yapping about something and you're just done, okay, now you're going to zone out. You're going to say, I'm paying attention, but you're not actually paying attention. Why? Because you absolutely are not motivated to listen to that rant, correct? And then there is evaluation of demands, as in how hard a task is. Okay. A lot of times you must have done this. When you are sitting in a class and a teacher is explaining something which is very, very easy, you're going to zone out. You're like, theek hai, fine. But then something very challenging comes up and you're like, okay, wait, this is something that I don't know. I have to pay attention to this. Why? Because the task is difficult. So that is basically your Kahneman's capacity model. Okay, are we clear with this? So far, we have looked at four models, correct? We looked at Broadbent's model, we looked at Priestman's attenuation model, we looked at late selection model, and now we looked at Kahneman's capacity model, right? Quickly, an MCQ on this. Quickly tell me what it is and then we move on. Kahneman's theory suggests that attention is what do you think it is? Correct. Correct. The answer is B, a flexible capacity resource. We are not talking about a fixed filter mechanism. Who said that it is a fixed filter mechanism? What do you think it is? Correct. Broadbent. Who said that attention is nothing but an automatic threshold activator? No. Automatic threshold activator was Treisman. Yes, correct. Correct. Yes. Because the threshold, why are we calling it automatic threshold? Because we don't know now that someone is going to take our name in the next 5 minutes, right? It is something which happens immediately. And who said late selection process? The last theory, late selection model that we spoke about. Perfect. Correct. Fine. Now, moving on, we'll talk about our next theory. Okay. Now, this theory can get a little confusing, but we'll deal with it. So it is called multiple resource theory, MRT. It was given by Christopher Vikins. Now, unlike Kahneman's model, which assumes that your attention is one flexible pool, it is an amalgamation of everything, right? Your motivation, the task difficulty, and everything. Multiple resource theory proposes that instead of there being one flexible pool, we have several independent pools of attentional resources. Okay? So, whether or not there is interference between tasks depends on how many resources, not on how many resources are needed per se, but what different kinds of resources are needed. As in, looking at attention as one thing, we are looking at different kinds of attentions or attentional resources. Okay. So I'll show you a table which will make it a little easy for you to understand. Think of attention having various dimensions. Okay. So those four dimensions are stage of processing, input modality, code of processing, and response type. Okay. Now, when you talk about stage of processing, you have different resource options. It can be perceptual in nature, it can be cognitive in nature, it can be motor in nature. For example, when someone is teaching you how to start washing machine, okay. Now, let's say your mother is teaching you, okay, I'll show you how to start a washing machine. Now, what is going to be much easier for you? Your mother coming to you and writing down in a notebook, you see, first you do this. Is that going to be easier? Or is it just directly going near the washing machine and seeing what buttons your mom is pressing? That is going to be easier. The second one, right? You going to the washing machine and seeing how it works. So that is a motor stage of processing. Correct? Then there is input modality. Is it visual or is it auditory in nature? So, for example, I'm reading a textbook versus I am listening to an audiobook. So that is input modality. Then there is code of processing. Is it verbal or is it spatial? So, for example, when I am learning to drive a car, the code of processing is spatial because I am looking everywhere, correct? And I'm understanding how to navigate a space. Then you have response type. Response type is manual versus vocal. For example, you must have done experimental psychology in your bachelor's, I'm sure, in some or the other way. Either you've gone as a participant or you must have yourself conducted experiments. A lot of times, there are different kinds of response types. Sometimes you ask a participants to respond manually, that is, say out loud yes or no. Okay? Sorry, vocally. That is a vocal response. Sometimes we ask them to respond manually, as in yes or no is written and you just have to point out. That is a manual response. Or you may ask them to tap on something. For example, when you watch Coffee with Karan and when Karan Johar asks his guests to press the buzzer, that is a manual response. Correct? Whereas when he asks Katrina Kaif and Anushka Sharma that listen, you raise your hand and you make some noise so that I know where to look when they don't really have a buzzer. What is that response type? It is vocal. Okay. So these are basically the dimensions of your attention according to Vikens. So he said instead of there being one pool of attention, we're looking at several independent pools. And what are these independent pools? There is stage of processing, there is input modality, there is code of processing, and there is response time. Okay. So think of it in this way. Imagine you have two tasks. Sorry, I don't know why my tab is doing this today. You have task A and you have task B. Okay. Now you have to tell me whether there is going to be any kind of interference. Interference meaning, do you think you are going to find it difficult to do the task or not? Okay. Let's say I am reading slides and I'm reading textbooks. If I have to do both of them at the same time, do you think it is going to be easy? Sarah, yes. All these theories, all these models that we're discussing, all of them fall under selective attention only. Correct. You are not going to be able to do that. For example, if you decide, okay, we are attending Snehal ma'am's class, we'll also look at the slides and at the same time, we're also going to read the chapters. Correct. Both are reading. So it's not going to be possible. Okay. Now, let's say I'm talking about listening to a podcast, and let's say I'm doing laundry also. Now, is there going to be a clash here? No, it is not going to be. Correct. Correct. So that is why a lot of times, when you're studying, many people find it difficult to study when, imagine when there is like Navratri going on, or when there are like these wedding ke sangeet ki jo bahut zor zor se awaaz aati rehti hai. If the music is very nice and we vibe to it, and if we are the songs are familiar to us, we know the hook steps, then it becomes very difficult to focus on what we study, right? Why? Because again, two very, very demanding tasks. But at the same time, when you're listening to some white music or something, Okay, or instrumentally, it's not going to cause interference per se, right? Because what you're doing when you're studying, even if you're studying in a like we're studying in English, but instrumental music may there is no language, so it is not going to interfere. Now let's say I'm talking to a friend, and at the same time I'm writing an essay. Do you think there is going to be a clash? Is there going to be an interference? Definitely yes. Why? Because both of them require verbal processing. Now, if I say I'm listening to music and I am also driving on a familiar route, I'm driving home. Is there going to be a clash? There is not going to be a clash. Why? Because you're using different codes, right? We spoke about codes of processing, correct? In the table here. Where is that table? Yeah, here. We spoke about codes of processing. So यहाँ पे the codes are itself very different, right? Plus, driving a familiar route is also a very automatic process, and listening to music is also fairly automatic in nature. Okay. Now, given this, let's quickly. Okay, what? Can you explain these examples again by breaking them down as per the model? Perceptual stage of processing, as in? Okay, stages of processing. Okay. So, fine. Let's first understand it in this way. Let's say I'm listening to music, okay, and at the same time, someone asks me to shuffle cards. Now, these are two different modalities, right? I mean, listening to music doesn't take so much effort, and at the same time, I'm also shuffling the cards, which is in a very different modality. Okay, so there is going to be no interference. I'm not going to have any difficulty doing either of the tasks. Okay. Now, when I say perceptual stage of processing, it has to do with, let's say, seeing something in front of you. Okay. If I see, for example, if I'm looking at a traffic signal, red, green, yellow. Okay, when I'm trying to process that, that is not a motor stage of processing. That is a perceptual stage of processing. Also a cognitive one, because I am trying to understand that, okay, red means stop, yellow means slow down, green means go ahead. Right? So that is stage of processing. Yeah, so when modalities are different, selective attention is going to be easier, because there is not going to be much of an interference. Because, tell me, have you all watched Modern Family? I have a very good example for that. You'll be able to understand this a little better. Yes, you all have watched Modern Family. Okay. Now I'm not exactly sure whether Phil does it, or whether Claire does it. I think it was Phil. So Phil is on the call, and he's been asked to remember a few things in numbers. Okay, and immediately he puts down his phone and he starts running in the kitchen, and he has to make a note of it. And at the same time, Claire walks in and she starts saying a bunch of numbers, and he gets frustrated. He's like, no, 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 don't do this. And then Luke comes in and he also starts saying a bunch of numbers. And then he gets all frustrated and he doesn't remember what numbers he was supposed to note down. So what is happening here is that there are everything is in numbers, right? So that gets confusing. Now he doesn't remember what it was. Correct? So that basically, I think, explains this pretty well, this entire model. Okay. So basically, perceptual stage is your brain just taking in information and recognizing sensory information even before you decide to act on it. Okay, so that is it. I think when I give you MCQs, you'll be able to understand this in a better way. Let's see. I think I've added an MCQ here. Yeah, look at this. According to multiple resource theory, which two tasks would most likely interfere with each other? Now tell me this. Correct. Reading a text and writing notes. Because listening to music and painting, again, two different modalities. Folding laundry and watching movie, also very different. Walking and chewing a gum, again, both of them being very, very automatic in nature. So it is C. Yeah, which slide do you want me to show you? This the table. This one. This. Okay, fine. There's still a lot that we're supposed to do today. Never mind. I'll take another 5-10 minutes and then we'll stop. Okay. So to quickly help you understand the table again, okay. I spoke about input modality. Input modality is nothing but where the information is coming from. Okay, so is it visual? As in, are you seeing slides? Are you watching a video? Or is it auditory? Is it listening to a lecture? Are you listening to music? So tasks which use same modality are going to interfere more. So two visual tasks are going to interfere more. In field and fees case, it was numbers plus auditory information. So interference was more. Okay, then you have stage of processing. As in, when you talk about, code of processing. When you talk about codes, it has to do with what kind of information you're dealing with. So is it words? Is it language? Is it speech? So that is verbal. So filled and fee case mein, the processing code was verbal because it had to do with like some symbols, it had to do with numbers, right? Whereas is it spatial? Is it images? Is it maps? Is it layouts? Is it movement? Right? So when you are talking plus reading, both of them are verbal in nature, there is going to be a clash. However, if you are talking, but someone asks you to read a graph, or while talking, someone asks you to look at Google Maps, it is verbal plus spatial, so it is going to be easier, right? If I talk about response type, it is basically how you respond or how you act. Are you doing it manually? That is, are you typing or are you pressing buttons? Or is it vocally? Are you talking? Are you repeating? So here, Phil Dunphy's response type was that of repeating the numbers because he did not have a physical pen and paper to note it down, right? So if it is talking plus writing, it is going to be different. It is going to be a little difficult. Sorry, it is going to be a little easier. ठीक है क्योंकि दो अलग चीजें हैं ना रिस्पॉन्स टाइप्स आई एम टॉकिंग टू यू एंड एट द सेम टाइम आई एम क्विकली मेकिंग अ नोट ऑफ समथिंग बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू टॉकिंग एंड डिक्टेटिंग both of them are going to be verbal in nature, both of them are vocal in nature, so there is going to be a clash. Okay. And then when I talk about stage of processing, like what phase of cognition are you in? So when I talk about perception, perceptual stage of processing is a little basic. Matlab you're just taking in information. Whereas when you talk about cognitive, now you're going to think about it. It is going to require some kind of thinking. For example, when I look at the traffic lights, red, yellow, green, now I'm actually understanding and now there is response selection. Now there is going to be some kind of execution that is going to happen that, okay, wait, it is yellow. Now it may turn green. And the moment it turns green, the signal, now you're going to act on it and then your motor response is going to be there. So that is your stage of processing. So if the two tasks which are presented to you, both of them require the same stage of processing. That is, both of them require perception or both of them require motor, like some kind of action, or both of them require cognitive processing, then your performance is going to drop. Okay, versus if one of them is a little easier, jaise, let's say I am folding my laundry and if your little brother comes and tells you, okay, is this word in capital letters, I just have to respond in yes or no, right? So that is perceptual stage. It does not really require me to think ki, oh, capital kya hota hai, small kya hota hai. No, it is just perceptual stage. So that task was in perceptual stage of processing, and me folding the laundry was motor stage of processing. So you get it, the difference between stages of processing. Is it clear now? Correct. So when two tasks demand similar kind of attention, so different pools के जब हम बात कर रहे थे, when both of them require similar kind, there is going to be more interference. Perfect. Very good. Okay. Now moving on. Another MCQ, which dimension is being overloaded? if a person fails to take notes accurately while reading a dense article. I'll show you the table also. Look at this table. The answer is going to be C, that is processing code. Okay, why is that? Because reading a dense article is verbal processing, correct? Taking notes is also verbal processing. So both tasks are using the same processing code, that is verbal. Why are other options wrong? Because see, when you talk about A, response type, यहाँ पे there is only one response type here, which is writing. Okay. Whereas reading is not the same response type. Then when you say B, input modality, both tasks are visual, yes. But the overload is not because of the fact that both are visual. The overload is because of the code. Are you getting it? You are not finding it difficult because writing notes is a visual task. It is because of the processing code. Same with stage of processing. Both tasks are at different stages. When you talk about reading, it is comprehension. Correct? Your understanding. It is still at a somewhere at a perceptual cognitive level. But when you are writing, it is a motor response. Correct? Think of it in this way. पहले आता है तुम्हारा perception, फिर आएगा तुम्हारा comprehension, cognition, right? Then comes motor. So when you talk about stages of processing, motor comes at a later stage, this comes at a later stage. So both tasks are at different stages. So overload is not definitely not happening because of stage of processing. Okay. So you have to understand if two tasks are using the same kind of mental work. Okay. So both are language heavy here. Then it is a processing code clash. Are we clear with this? It is not D because what does stage of processing say? That both the tasks are clashing because of them being at the same stage of processing. Here, writing an article is a motor task, whereas, taking notes is a motor task, whereas reading an article is a comprehension task. So both of them are at two different stages of processing. The reason why we are not able to do both of them correctly is because of the processing code and there being a clash in that. Yeah, I'll show you the table. This. The difference between cognitive and perceptual processing is that perception is the early stage. Jahan pe you're still gathering information and you're making sense of it. Okay, you're interpreting the information that is presented to you. Cognitive processing is a little bit higher level of processing. Okay. Are you getting it? Cognitive is going to require more mental faculties than perception. Okay? Fine. Someone had asked about spotlight theories and zoom theories. We will be talking about it, I think, in the next class because it's already 7:07. I plan to finish attention today, but I guess, we are a little unaware of the other model, so that is why it took time. So next class we meet, we will finish attention and we'll start with perception. Can you differentiate between code processing and response type? Yeah. Your response type is how the person who is responding to that situation is supposed to respond. So is it going to be manual or is it going to be vocal? For example, let's say code of processing, let's say it is verbal. Let's say you're in an experiment and the instructor has given you instructions verbally. Okay. Now, it may not be necessary that as a participant, it is expected of you to respond vocally. हो सकता है that the experimenter gives instructions verbally, but then you're supposed to draw a particular diagram. For example, the 9-dot problem. The instructor tells you, I'm not sure if you know it. It is a very popular 9-dot problem. It's a very popular thing in cognitive psychology. So, for example, or think of any puzzle, random puzzle or join the dots thing. The experimenter is giving you verbal instructions, but then you are supposed to join the dots manually with your hand. So that is the difference between code of processing and response type. Are we clear with this? Spatial code of processing would be learning to drive a car. So here, let's say when you're looking at the map, let's say you are looking at Google Maps and you're driving. That Google Map is the code of processing is spatial here because you have to look at the blue line. You have to understand when to take right, when to take left, right? There are words written there, but we don't really look at the words in the map, right? So in the MCQ, isn't reading and writing a response type that are both manual? Correct. No. Okay, that is what you're asking. No. So, for example, when I'm reading a book, I am not manually doing something. As in, if I'm reading an article, I don't have to actively do something. I'm reading it. It is more of a mental activity. It is more of a comprehension thing. Whereas when I'm taking notes, it requires you to like not only understand but also write something down. So in that case, the response type is going to be a little like यहाँ पे थोड़ा अलग होगा. Are you getting it? Like the more accurate response is going to be processing code and not the response type. Okay, fine. So we'll stop here because I've already taken like 10 minutes. Whatever doubts or whatever you have, you can ask me in the next class and we will continue with models of attention. We still have, I think, 4 or 5 more models. We will also be looking at another of Treisman's theory, which is feature integration theory. And we will also be looking at 2 disorders. Okay, so fine, all right. Quickly tell me if today's class was okay. You understood the flow and you got it or no? Because you might never learned cognition together. That's why. All right, fine, cool. Okay, the next person can take over. I will leave. Bye bye.
Sarah, you can stop recording.